As you know, there are many games in the Assassin's Creed series, and what comes with those many games? Many ways to play them. You could be slicing up a fool in AC Odyssey on a ship, and then 1 hour later, you could be skulking the rooftops of Paris in AC Unity to take out your target silently. Or maybe you're blending amidst a crowd in Venice during the Renaissance period, stalking your target. So I asked my viewers, what do you want to see in your perfect Assassin's Creed game? And I haven't read any of them yet, so we'll go through them and see what people are saying. Classic parkour, AC1 combat, Kenway stealth, cities with level design like AC1's, very good for parkour. So when Dan says classic parkour, I guess he's talking about, yeah, like the AC1 to Revelation style parkour. Now, what came with that was a lot of control. Let's not lie to ourselves, obviously the parkour in the older games looks nowhere near as good as games like AC3 or of course Unity. But again, AC1 through Revelations had precision. You had back and side ejecting. So for example, if you were running up a building, changed your mind, wanted to jump left or right or backwards, you could do that on the fly. AC3 dumbs this down, side and back ejecting were present, but it was very much more on the rails. I can show an example of this where I'm trying to side eject in Assassin's Creed 3, but it just won't let me, and it's really annoying. And of course, with games like AC Unity, parkour looked amazing, it felt satisfying, it was probably the most definitive visually, but there was no side and back ejecting really, and it was just more of an animation style parkour system than it was a control parkour mechanic. But what I do agree with on this comment is AC1's level design for parkour. You could probably stretch out all the way to Revelations really. Those cities were built in mind for the parkour. If you look at Shadows, for example, it's all pretty much wilderness, and I personally haven't seen a single part of the world where it is built for parkour. 50% in the modern day with a good modern day story and interesting characters. Also realistic takes on the traditional outfits of past characters much like Arno or Altair, whose outfits match the era. I'd also love a focus on Templars again instead of ISU. Now I want to touch upon the last part of that comment, more of a focus on the Templars than the ISU. The whole ISU storyline works best when it was few and far between, when it was subtle, when it was there to push the story forwards, but that story mainly focusing on the assassins of the Templars and the sci-fi mystery with Desmond. I think a lot more recently with Odyssey's DLC, for example, it takes that concept of the ISU, and yes, it expands on the lore, but I think it kind of misses the point of why the ISU were created for the story in the first place. It was a literary device. It added context to the Assassin Templar War. It showed that history repeats itself. In a lot of ways, the ISU storyline was kind of just there for mostly exposition between characters to build the world. Again, going back to the Odyssey example, it's there to give your character more superpowers, to be able to have more of a fantasy game for the players, and to give them the ability to have like flaming swords and super kick and stuff like that. And again, for someone who appreciated the art of the original, it kind of hurts me physically and mentally to see what they did with the ISU, you know, further down the line. Then again, when this comment says 50% in the modern day, I would say that's probably way too much. You know, I think modern day was perfect when it was, again, also few and far between, but aided that story, split things up a bit, changed the pacing in a way that lended into the forefront of the game, which was that historical setting. I think AC1 does this really well. Just at the perfect time, it will take you out of the animus. When I say the perfect time, for story, it's perfect. It again gives more context to the story. With Altair and Desmond, it shows their parallels. There's also a lot of exposition between War on Vidic and Desmond, and then before you get bored there, you're straight back in the Animus, and then you're refreshed and you're going on with Altair's story. I think that's kind of perfect to weave it in with narrative, to have it make sense rather than not just be a gimmick. Does it work in tandem is basically what I'm trying to say. Ezio's trilogy type were the protagonists. Now I wouldn't say that's a hot take, but it's definitely a juicy one. There's a reason that Ezio is pretty much the poster boy of Assassin's Creed all these years later. The last game we had with him was in 2011, but if you ask anybody who isn't really entwined with the Assassin's Creed series and you say Assassin's Creed, they're probably going to have an image of Ezio. Now I think the closest we've gotten to having a character like Ezio again, with depth, with substance, with the possibility for multiple entries with their character, is Bayek. I think he was set up perfectly to have a sequel, and then who knows, maybe one more game after that. But, you know, they moved on to Odyssey and they didn't touch his character again. I like to imagine the possibilities of what an Assassin's Creed Origins sequel would have been. I like to imagine that it would have focused a little bit more on Aya, with her founding the Roman Brotherhood Brotherhood. And much like a game like The Last of Us, where you play as Ellie and then you skip over to playing as Abby and there's that different contrast, maybe something similar could have happened in an Assassin's Creed Origins sequel. We're also seeing the establishment of the Roman Brotherhood with Aya, and maybe there's contrast, maybe there's parallels, but maybe we can see two different types of leadership and how that would work, and two different types of opposition. I guess that's never happening though at this point, so we should probably just forget our dreams and deal with what we've got. Brotherhood's combat with Unity stealth plus a good dark story setting during the Salem witch trials. Now, it's funny that this comment mentions witch trials. It's been alluded to us that Assassin's Creed codename Hexe, which is a game coming out in the next couple years in the Assassin's Creed series, will be revolving around hunting witches and that sort of thing. According to leaked information, we're also getting to play as a cat. A mystical cat or something like that, and that makes me just want to shove an apple of Eden in my mouth and extend my hidden. What am I talking about? What I liked about Unity stealth is that you could properly hide behind things by taking cover. With Unity and Syndicate, I would say that was probably the best stealth we've got in an Assassin's Creed game. It was probably the most refined we've had it. That being said, traditional stealth like that does take away from the social stealth aspect of games, which made Assassin's Creed as unique as it was in the first place. And Brotherhood's combat was fun and engaging in a way, but it was easy, and I think you could benefit an Assassin's Creed game having a little bit more of a challenge in combat. I think the Assassin's Creed game that really took the old and blended it with something new and did it well when it comes to combat was Assassin's Creed Unity. Again, it was far from perfect, but I think if they'd worked off of the basis of that combat, we could probably have something quite grounded in reality of Assassin's Creed and weighty and real to the player. Now, when I say weighty, I don't mean the character should be feeling slow and brutish, because they're a fast assassin, you want to feel fast, but what I mean is it felt like there was a real urgency to the fighting in Unity. Yes, Brotherhood focused on the fact that an assassin is fast and quick and witty, I don't know if that's the right word, and can take out 10 enemies at once, but the life of an assassin is a dangerous one, and that's what I felt with Unity's combat. Maybe a balance between Brotherhood and Unity would be good, I don't know. A remastered version of the first Assassin's Creed game from 2007 with better stealth, greater parkour, etc. Now, conceptually, on paper, that's a sick idea, but I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I do not trust Ubisoft to make a good remaster of Assassin's Creed 1. I think Assassin's Creed 1 was a product of its time. There was no perception of a wider, greater series. It was a focused, condensed game that was going to be a one and done at the time. I truly believe the game director of AC1 had a vision, and in his mind, he wanted to create art, and I think that's why Assassin's Creed 1 was so good. Can you tell the story of AC1 as well as it was done in a movie format, for an example? I don't think so. The amount of time we spend with Altair and the surrounding characters and that world, I think are done perfectly in video game format, and I think, again, the game director had this vision for what he wanted the game to be. He knew that video games was the perfect format to tell that story, and he created art. Now, here's a great example of how Ubisoft do not understand art as they used to. In Assassin's Creed Mirage, you can apply an AC1 filter to your game. This basically just completely eliminates all the saturation and hue and vibrant colors of Assassin's Creed Mirage and gives you a white, bluish sort of wash over your screen. The thing is, Assassin's Creed 1 never had an AC1 filter. It was never just blue. It was very dependent on the setting you were in during your playthrough of AC1. So for an example, Jerusalem had a very vibrant color, kind of similar to Baghdad. This was to represent the Templars' lavish wealth and power and how they can flaunt it, how they can control basically everything. And then if we're going to look at this AC1 filter, that was actually the filter, if you want to call it that, of Arca, another city in AC1. Now, this was a washed out, depressing tone to accurately reflect the vibe of that setting. Arca at the time of AC1 had just been basically obliterated in a war. The Christians have taken over that land. In the story of AC1, it was the Templars that destroyed Arca and took it over, and that was again to show how powerful they were, how much control they can ensue on their people. So again, Ubisoft having this AC1 filter for Mirage, yeah, it's good fan service, I guess, but it shows to me that they don't understand the true art of AC1 and the design choices they made that tie into, well, design to narrative to the overall game. So, if Ubisoft do indeed ever remake Assassin's Creed 1, I don't trust them to do it any justice. They're going to make what was a focused storyline, this big open-ended expanded thing, this world like Assassin's Creed Odyssey maybe, where Altair goes on tons of fetch quests during his very important mission. Hell, he might even get a ton of ISU powers and be able to super kick people across Masyaf. And you know for sure there's gonna be like a Malik microtransaction pack where you can dress up in the attire of Malik and have one arm and just assassinate with one arm. Or they'll probably bring back the Abstergo pack where you can dress up as an Abstergo employee in the Holy Land. And it's just, again, that's a different type of game, but it completely takes a shit on the art direction of the original, and it gets rid of the charm of what people loved about AC1. You might as well just make another game at that point. What would be your perfect Assassin's Creed game? If you didn't comment here, comment in the comments over this video and we'll get a conversation going and build the AC community. You can become an official member of the Exiles AC community for 99 cents per month. It supports me and it gives you access to emojis like this in the comments. If you did enjoy this video and you're new, you can press the subscribe button to stay up to date with everything Assassin's Creed Shadows, Hexe, AC2, or whatever AC game you like. It's probably there on the channel. Also, a like would be much appreciated. You can follow me on Twitter. I love you guys. Make the father of understanding guide us. I will see you soon. Goodbye.